I call this meeting to order. This is the Operations Committee meeting for Tuesday, October 15th, 2019. The first order of business, there's a typo on our agenda, is the call to order, which is at 6:30. The acceptance of minutes is the next order of business. Are there any corrections, deletions, omissions noted by the committee? I do note some corrections. If memory serves, this was a special Operations Committee meeting because it started at 7 rather than 6:30, our last Operations Committee meeting. I do believe that needs to be reflected in the minutes. Any other corrections, deletions, omissions? Seeing none, we'll take consensus, starting with Mrs. Corso.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And yes with the corrections. The next order of business is item 3, discussion and possible consensus, the financial report for September 2019, starting with A1 and A2. Mr. Barone.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Good evening. I have, this is our first projection for the year, so we've only projected a handful of the accounts. Normally we start out, and as the year goes on, we expand the projections. To really highlight the contingency, we're expecting a surplus of $343,949. That's what we were budgeted, and we're hoping not to use that money. This next two items I'm going to talk about together are the benefits and the salaries, and you can see we're projecting a deficit in the benefits of $210,928, and in the salaries of $233,036, and that's basically because when we developed the budget, we removed some staff out of the budget numbers, and then we had to add them back due to the different.
Yeah, actually, if I could speak to that.
Yeah, sure.
Because it ties into what you were about to say, but then it also ties into some comments and questions that have been asked around town. I know of board members as well as of myself. When we projected the budget, we were based, as we always do, basing it on the number of students that we had at the time. The board, about 4 to 5 years ago, we decided not to tell students who their teachers were on the last day, but to wait till August. So we waited till the middle of August to make decisions on hiring back staff because we had to open up the parent portal. I believe it opened on August 19th, if I'm not mistaken. So at that point, we realized we did have to open up sections to make sure that we accommodated the Board of Ed agreed upon guidelines for class size, which is pre-K 2, no more than 21, 3-5, no more than 23, middle school and high school. Middle school is more difficult because it's a teaming structure, so you only have so many teachers, but in years past, we have opened up additional 6 sections, so to mitigate the high classes, as well as at the high school level. As a result, after reviewing it, we did have to hire 5 or reinstate 5 positions at the elementary level. So that was in order to keep those guidelines in place. Since the beginning of the school year, we still maintain the levels that we're at, with the exception of there are a few, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 first grade classrooms across the district that did have to go up to 22, of which there are 2 of the 4 classrooms are where there's a student who's only in there part of the time. So it's not throughout the whole day. Secondly, the other 2 classrooms they increased above the 21 threshold due to the fact that we had a student transfer back from a private school in the area, as well as move into town. So those were unforeseen, and those happened in the middle of September, end of September. So we don't open a new section at that point unless we have a larger quantity of students that arrive. So I know there has been conversation about how the class sizes might be increasing, but they are not increasing. They're staying within the board guidelines. We don't have classes of 16 and 17 like we did last year, academic year of 2018-19, because unfortunately we maintained teachers and we didn't have the students that enrolled. So this year we were trying to be a little bit more judicious in doing that, and that's why we do have classes at the 3-5 schools. We do have a couple of 23s, but again, that's within the board guidelines. And as I just stated, at the elementary school, at the K2, pre-K2 schools, we do have those little pockets. Middle school and high school right now are probably at the lowest or best ratio or best class size that we've had in a long time. You do have your anomalies in your band and your chorus and your physical education. Health is always a difficult one at the middle school because every student gets that all year, so that's oftentimes a little bit higher. But overall, our content area classes we've maintained, and the principals have done a very, very nice job at both levels of really trying to make sure class sizes are as level as possible. There are some outliers, of course, because of algebra at the middle school and world language, but I just wanted to clarify. If there are board members who have questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Okay, Mrs. McKay, followed by Mr. Votto.
Obviously, board members know the answer to this question, but for TV land, Dr.
Sure.
Menza, would you remind, for the public, what our parameters are for elementary,
so
just so people understand?
So pre-K2,
contextually.
again, is no more than 21, and 3-5 is no more than 23. And those have been in existence since 2010.
Right, thank you for that.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, I just want to go back over what you said with the 22.
Mm-hmm.
You said 2 of those, one child is only there part of the day, correct?
2 of those classes, a child is only there part of the day, most likely comes with an additional adult. And then the other 2 classes are students who came in after the start of the school year. Also, I just need to make sure that everybody understands too in TV land that there are 2 adults in every kindergarten classroom at the very least. There's a full-time paraeducator plus a full-time teacher. And also at the grades 1 and 2, there are paraeducators that are shared or in the classrooms portions of those days as well. So we're very fortunate in our pre-K classrooms. We have 3 adults. We have 2 paraeducators plus a full-time teacher.
Now, you mentioned that last year we had some classes with 16. And that
Correct.
weren't many of those, correct?
There were at a couple of schools, there were more than traditionally the case. The year before was a similar situation, and I think you might recall that we had discussions during the budget process that there were concerns that the class sizes were going up. But again, we've always maintained the level. And again, we're October 15th today. These numbers shift on an ongoing basis. As was presented to you over the last couple of years, we've shared with you that over 700 students come in and out of our district during the school year. So these numbers are going to vary, and we can never get it down to a perfect science. I think our administrators at the building level have done a really good job of keeping the central office staff informed so we can make the best decisions. And that's why we've delayed the parent portal opening as long as we have, just to make sure that we're making the best decisions in the best interest of students.
And isn't it true that some of the encore classes, it's just because of the way the schedules go that you can't possibly avoid having a few more kids in class?
Correct, and we're constantly, especially at the middle school level, which is the encore level, we're constantly looking at that. And today we had a middle school principals meeting, and we think that we might have captured a schedule that's going to be more beneficial than others in terms of the rotation of periods. It's not so much the schedule itself, but how the schedule rotates through. So we think we might have come upon something, the administrators might have come upon something that we could even continue to mitigate those bubbles.
Thank you for that explanation.
Mrs. Corso?
What is the minimum number of students required in a high school level class to run the course? Is there a
We usually
specific-
we try to maintain no less than 10.
Okay.
However, we've also, we've had times where we have to go below that because it's like an art studio class that's an AP art studio. We also try to combine if we have, at all costs, we try to avoid canceling a class for a student because that's the first and foremost, and you as a school counselor, you know how difficult it is. But we try to combine levels, especially in some of those areas. So if we have, say, a studio art AP and then another version of AP or honors, whatever it may be, we might try to combine that. Same thing with languages, especially when you get into your French or your Latin. We try to combine those classes so we have a substantial number of students. But every so often, after the add drop period, or I shouldn't say add period, the drop period, you do have classes that go below the threshold that we look at traditionally. But the high school principals have been working very, very hard. They share all of their course request lists, their load lists. We go through that. Ms. Latour, Ms. Belizzi, myself go through that. But again, we try to maintain no less, but this year we do have some classes that are the 7s and the 8s because it just happened to fall that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mrs. Purcell?
You mentioned in the middle school that the PE classes are larger?
No, I didn't. They're,
Oh, they're not? Okay.
no, they're not. It's actually, it's at the high school. There's a couple that are,
Okay.
the PE has one. I
Okay.
think there's one section that is a little bit larger.
Than-
but
than
they're-
than the regular classrooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're really, the good news is that, again, the scheduling, and with Mr. Loomis's help, we've really
Okay.
tried to kind of level that out, because we don't want to make it a scenario where we have these inflated numbers. The
Right.
chorus and band are tough, though.
Yeah, no, I was just checking because I know that the size of the gyms are smaller than the elementary gyms. And
Correct.
once you cut it in half,
The
and the
teaching
size of the kids are
stations-
bigger, so I
correct.
wanted to,
And it's the
Make
teaching
sure.
stations too, Miss. You're right, Patty. In the sense that the teaching stations at one school are definitely different scenario than the other.
right.
So we're trying. The health classes, though, that's a little bit more difficult because
Well, that's not as much of a safety issue, so I was
No,
thinking
but
of the
it's
other.
also important. They're talking about some important
Right.
topics,
Okay,
so you want to make sure that there's a sensitivity to those topics.
thank you.
Main thing is wear deodorant. That's the key thing in the middle school. Sorry. That's a very, right, Mr. Votto? You knew when your kids came from gym. They arrived before, something else arrived before they did, so. So I just wanted to give you those updates, and my heart is in the middle school, so obviously anybody watching that at home knows that that's not a derogatory comment. That is just out of love in my heart for the middle school level that I will always appreciate, so.
Okay, Mr. Barone, continuing on with this
Sorry, Mr.
report.
Barone.
No, thank you.
Sorry.
Want to do the rest of it?
How do you follow up
So,
I can.
I know. So, on the tuitions, we're projecting currently a deficit of $213,588, and that's going to fluctuate as it does all year. And also, in the excess cost estimate, we're projecting it just at zero right now. We don't really project it till we actually do our first filing. That's due, I believe, November 1. And so, depending on when we get the filing done, we'll have a projection either next meeting or the following one. All right, and then for transportation, we're projecting currently a surplus of $352,649, and again, that's going to fluctuate based on, if we transport more students or if other things that might happen, we might do more field trips, et cetera. All
Why
right,
do we have that large of a accrued amount at this time of year?
on transportation? Because right now, we are.
Did we not require buses that we thought we would, or were there changes in special education?
There were some changes in the special ed, but that's gonna actually fluctuate, so I think,
We won't see it that,
it could go up,
all
could go
right.
down.
all right,
Okay.
just checking. Just wondered
All
why
right.
it was at that amount.
And I think that we probably projected a little more aggressively this year. In the past, it was, we thought it might be higher, but kind of kept it lower, thinking that we were gonna utilize it, and we didn't. So it's a little bit of a different approach, too.
Mrs. Raccio?
So, Dom, with the transportation, there's been a lot of hiccups so far at the beginning of the year with bus drivers and combining routes and students getting home significantly later than what they should. Are we getting credits every time they have to combine routes? Because isn't our contract based on the number of routes they run?
It's based on the number of elementary school routes. So we go back and ask for credits on, when they combine the
Okay.
routes. We will go back and ask, but it's also based on a tiered number of routes. So I guess theoretically, if they were to combine enough routes, we might be still running buses at the middle school or at the high school that we would get billed for. But yeah, we will look to get credits on the combined routes.
And is there any way to look at the routes? I mean, if we had the capacity to put 2 routes on the same bus, is there any way to just look at redoing some of the routes so that we can eliminate some of these? Because they're having such a difficult time finding drivers.
We did actually, 2 years ago, we did look at it. We were able to permanently consolidate, not like we're doing, because the drivers are out. But I don't know how much more we can really consolidate on a permanent basis. We're trying to work with the vendor. We asked them, to put some signs up at the schools and reach out, when we contact the parents, and certain emails to let them know that, they're looking to hire drivers. But it's not the whole state is really experiencing it. So it's just a tough time right now, and I don't know when it's going to get better. How much quicker it's going to take to get more drivers in to really eliminate some of this.
For the little ones, it's just if they combine an elementary route, you have 5-year-olds who are sitting on a bus for close to an hour, in some cases over an hour.
Yeah, and that's the other piece.
And that's not every single day,
Sure.
but when it happens, that's a long, long time for a 5-year-old.
And that's also the other piece of the combining, whether you can
I know.
physically get enough kids on a bus, but also how long are they going to be on that bus? So that's the other piece that has to be taken into consideration.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Votto?
On a positive note, I do know of one particular route. I've never seen it like this before. Very much on time, every single day, which is welcoming. In the past, it was all different times. Now this year, same time every day. It's amazing. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
That's great.
Any other?
Just in that summary, we're at, we're projecting a $39,046 surplus at this point. And that's really the financial projection for October.
Okay. And the Munis just supports what we just went over.
Correct.
So we can move on to, unless there are questions on Munis? No? We can move on to item 3A, allocation of additional unencumbered funds.
Okay, so basically, there are 2 new requests on here. The items above the new request line we've already discussed and you've voted on. We have the first request is for the playground at Pond Hill to move it, or to move the location and put in new equipment. And we are estimating it's about $83,621. And then the second request is for the additional studies we're going to do, energy and facilities, of $125,000. And that $125,000 figure, I believe, was on the last document we discussed at the last meeting. So the new item is the playground at Pond Hill.
And the playground is being recommended by being moved in collaboration with some work that's being done by Eversource. So we really have no recourse except to move the playground. They're providing some funds towards other aspects of the project, fencing and such, but this came up actually soon thereafter our last meeting, so it was fortuitous. And then we had a meeting with Eversource, and I've also talked to the mayor about this, and so we're in a position where it's a right-of-way type of scenario that we have to. We don't know why the playground was put where it was. It predates everybody on this side of the table, that's for certain. So we just want to make certain that we accommodate what is supposed to happen in the best interest of the circumstance. So the timing was good, and we're
Okay, Mrs. McKay, followed by Mr. Votto.
Yeah, so thank you. I was just trying to follow everything from what we tabled in September. So I just want to make sure I'm right in saying this. So the ceiling fans from Fritz, that got covered elsewhere? Because that was on the original one. What happened to that?
Facilities was a little more efficient than we gave them credit for, and they actually did some of
So that
work.
worked out, you didn't need
Yes.
to be there.
Yes.
Okay, so then my next one is, we have kitchen floor tile HL, which had 8,500. So I'm confused, because in the new one, I've got a kitchen floor tile HL 4,000, And then a kitchen floor tile, 8,500. So just to clarify, I'm not sure what, you know, it doesn't map over, a little bit of an addition of 4,000, not a lot of money, but just want to make sure, what am I looking at there?
I think they both were on the original September 9th.
The 4,000?
And then right below it was 8,500.
No. I mean, I'm looking
I
at,
think
I've
they were on
got
the
it.
previous one is really what.
I'm looking at my
yeah.
September one,
Okay.
September
Oh.
9th.
Okay.
I'm actually looking at my September 9th, I brought it.
Yeah, I,
And mine just has, well, kitchen floor tile, HL 85. It
Okay.
doesn't show the 4,000.
What was your subtotal?
Yeah, the subtotal, good point. Well,
So-
yeah, because
so
the
the other-
subtotal was 208, 621
Yep.
versus 225, 621, but we lost 6,000 from the fans. So basically 10,000, yeah, the numbers actually don't add up.
okay.
So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm just,
Actually, the other change too was the sidewalks at MYB.
yeah, that was
We
10.
were gonna, we thought we were gonna do those, but the vendor couldn't do them. So
Moved to
we moved it-
1%.
We moved
I
it
have
to
that
1%.
moved to 1%, so that would
yeah,
make up
yeah.
the other, that's true, I do have that note. Moved to 1%, so you're right, so that should actually be out of the updated, right? The October 15th, it shouldn't, what sidewalks?
No, it needs to go into 1%. We never did that. We weren't
Right, so
able
that
to,
needs
yeah.
to be removed from that, doesn't it? From
No,
the
it
October
was-
15th.
No, it was
You're saying it went to the 1%.
No, this is for the
previously
1%.
allocated.
Okay,
In the previous one, we were allocating it to do it before June 30.
gotcha,
And then we couldn't get to it because the vendor was
got it.
busy with
And
other.
that,
yeah,
what
so-
moved us
so-
over,
but we-
perfect,
yeah.
okay, that's true, so the numbers are misaligned on that too, yeah. So 215, so anyway, I think we're off by, I don't see the 4,000,
The other one, okay.
not a big deal, but.
Do we know what the 4,000 is?
Well, here, well, on the October 16th, it's kitchen floor tile HL,
It's HL, what's HL, Highland?
Yeah.
which was 4,000.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And actually, on the September 9th, it's kitchen floor for Highland was 8,500.
Okay, so the.
That's what I'm
4,000
saying, so
all
I
right.
think the 4,000 is an extra, does that need to be there or no? Oh,
Which
which one doesn't? Right, that's what I'm thinking, that's what I thought, the 4,000 doesn't need to be there. It just, I hate to be nitpicky, but,
That's 4,000.
so that's 4,000 that
something else with
actually
it.
from the October 15th could be removed. Am I right in saying that?
Well, we gotta do something with it, though. We should.
Right,
Yeah, yeah, okay,
well,
yeah,
it's
it's-
removed from that,
It's
from
removed
from that usage,
Correct.
let's put
Okay,
it that
yeah,
way.
all right. Okay.
So you guys can figure out the rest, sorry, not to be, that didn't line up for me. So actually, that could maybe, well, that probably doesn't work. Okay, I made my point, I'm gonna be quiet now.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, Dr. Menzi, you might have answered some of this, because you mentioned fencing or something.
Yeah.
We put that playscape where it is now because there was no issue with wires or anything like that, but obviously something that Eversource is doing now, they recommend that playscape not be there because there's a danger of some type?
No,
or-
it's not about, it's easement and it's access. So if something where they needed to get to because this is Eversource's lines. These are not Wallingford Electric lines. So we have to give them access to the area. And right now, the playscape is in an area that if they needed to get to those, it's not in the best area.
So it's
So-
but it's because of them that we have to move
Correct,
this.
and they're giving us
They're
funding.
gonna give us what? That was my next question.
I don't know if the final number has been resolved or and identified, but, and I think it would be premature for me to say that
Okay.
publicly.
But they probably will do something? you
Oh,
think?
they definitely are.
All right.
It's
You
a matter
mentioned
of,
fencing, I thought maybe that's what they were.
well, they were looking at that as a potential use of it.
Okay.
Because we don't want to, we're trying to figure out how to do the procurement piece because they're going to have to give the money to the town. So we have to make sure that we're following all procurement procedures because they might have a different fencing or other company. They don't have obviously playground company. So we have playground opportunities, they don't. So we're trying to figure out what's the most efficient way of doing this. It wouldn't be done until the spring, or even potentially over the summer, because we don't want to disrupt the environment.
So it has to do with access.
It's really doing with access.
Okay.
When they went out there and they did an analysis of what they're doing, because they do, a lot of the electric companies are doing analysis of their lines based on the storms, and they're cutting a lot of trees and all those things. According to what was shared with us in a meeting, it's regarding the access piece, that if there is an issue, they need to get access to their lines, and we have a playscape, then we have an issue.
Now, did you say that we're going to like update it as well?
We're gonna, this will be a new playscape.
It'll be
Correct.
brand new.
Yeah, because you can't, unfortunately, I think Mark,
Oh, that's
you know,
something.
they can't really, we can't really
Can't
take
take
them
it
apart.
apart.
Costs just as much to move it, and then you do the,
I think it's within $8,000 or $10,000 of a brand new playscape.
Yeah, so you're better off.
And then you have to worry
I
about
remember when that went up.
warranties, and you
Yeah.
have to worry about all those things and safety. So it's just easier and
Cleaner.
more sufficient and more appropriate for us to establish a new setting, a new level ground, and go from there.
Thank you.
Mrs. Purcell?
Is there, I know it was like 30 years ago or whatever, but is there any way of knowing, did the town give a building permit to put that there? And if they did, is that our responsibility? The
I
money?
think that, again,
Okay,
it
well,
wasn't,
however,
it
whenever
wasn't
I don't know
30. It
anything.
was about 15 years ago. Again, I think the PTO raised the funds for it.
Right.
I can't really speak to it, and I think really right now the culpability piece, it's just we need to do this what's best for students, and we are
Oh,
kind of all
no,
part
I
of one
get that.
pot.
I'm just saying, I was
So,
just saying if the town permitted it, it'd be nice if town helped
I think there was a
put some money
different-
into it.
I think there was a different town building inspector. There was definitely a different town engineer. So
Okay.
There might have been a P&Z approval, but there wouldn't have been a building permit for a playground.
Not for a playground, something like that? That's amazing.
Mrs. McKay?
So, at one, excuse me, back in September, we had as a placeholder, the innovation and design for the aerospace. So how are you looking there?
well, we've gotten to date, and I can't name. the
Yeah, I
names.
don't want details, but.
we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, so you're-
today I did a couple of cold calls, and one of them worked out really, really well.
Oh, well, there you go.
So it was a Harvard Business Journal magazine article that I received, and they're just got grants from the NASA, and I
Yeah.
said, hey, you might want to be partners with us. And one company, both are very interested. They're going to attend the event. One
Great.
said they would definitely financially support us. So we're getting the funds.
Yeah.
I was confident that we would.
Yeah, I know
just
you
wanted
said that,
to-
but
I just was looking for a placeholder, as we said, didn't stall our
Correct.
process, but we're moving forward. And we did definitely, I could say that we definitely got a donation from Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, which was very kind. And that one is the only one I can say definitively.
No,
I mean, the other ones
I'm
are
not
coming,
looking-
but
I'm not looking to hold you to anything, but I just didn't want that to get stalled. Obviously, we have to do, we have the balancing act and trying to figure that out.
and we
but-
received some really good service donations. So hopefully, again, we'll be announcing these. I'm looking to try to announce most of them at our board meeting on October 28th, the day before the launch
Fun.
of the center.
Right.
So we could talk about the community, how generous it's been to help us.
Thank you for that.
Mrs. Raccio?
When we look at the playground, will it be an handicapped accessible or an
Yes.
all-inclusive?
All playgrounds are handicap accessible now. We wouldn't put anything else in. There are different levels of accessibility.
Right.
But we do have to meet those standards. Not that we're necessarily compelled to, but if anyone ever complained and there was a judgment against us,
Right.
that would be a problem.
I was asking in regards, there's actually one right in North Haven that's gone in, and it's an all-inclusive. So there's areas for children with autism. It's not just accessible from a wheelchair standpoint, or
Yeah.
so that every handicapped child can reach the highest point of the playground. But there's different levels of accessibility, so I didn't know what we were considering.
It's not in the planning stages as far as the playground goes, but, we're gonna look at those things. We always try to make them as accessible as we possibly can, and include those different elements that other children that may be on the, a different type of activity for those children. That's all considered.
So we can add that into the specifications with the assistance of your help, Ms. Turner. And of course, all this has to go out to bid. So that's a foregone conclusion, as you all know.
Thank you.
Any other remarks on this? So then, these two items are going to reach the subtotal of 208,621, correct? The two on the bottom of your sheet, 3A3. The new request at the bottom would be the swing set and the energy facilities study.
Plus the 4,000 that were, yeah, the 4,000.
Right, but
that-
those are the
yeah.
two requests that, the 4,000, I guess my question is, what are we just holding that in abeyance, or are we earmarking it for something?
Well, can we earmark it?
Couldn't you put it in with the swing set? That's not, you still have to go out for bid. You don't even know what that's gonna be yet.
I would say that that would be the best decision, is put it with a swing set, because those are not cheap whatsoever. So I would put it in there, and then worst case scenario is, again, we can, when we look at these accounts, and we look at them regularly, we move money, as you know, we clump it together, and then we come back to you and say, okay, we have this amount of money. Remember, we got the truck or something a couple of years ago? We did that. So I don't think it would be foolish. I think it would be a good idea just to lump it with that, so we have the extra funds. The other thing and I'm not trying to prolong this conversation, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that we did do our due diligence when it comes to this whole process. The last time we spoke, I remember we had a conversation about the security elements that we were doing at 10 of the schools and not 2 of the schools. We did look at that. The work that's going to be necessary would be well over millions of dollars, because we have to do design specs. So it's not that it's going to go off the table forever, but it just couldn't be accommodated by the amount of money that we were talking about, the 83,000 or 208,000. So that will continue to be in our strategic plan, because there has to be design work, and it was actually 3 schools. It was Stevens, Cook Hill, and also Sheehan. So there's the idea was that when Mark did the analysis, when you did that, and then you took, we got the estimate or the price of what we paid for the one vestibule that was added to Lyman Hall, that was going to bring us well over the $1 million mark. So that's why we didn't add that to this proposal, because we didn't have the money, obviously, left to do that.
Mrs. Castelli?
Raise your hand, Mr. Votto. With respect to the 3 schools, then I noticed in the annual report that Stevens is this first school to get
Silox.
Right. So I would like to make a recommendation then that if you're not already planning this, that be the other 2 schools that are lacking the double entry be the next 2 to be considered for Silox, because I think that's an excellent
Well,
safety
all
measure.
Silox should be in all schools.
Oh, I thought it was going. I thought
Yeah,
it was.
we paid it. That's already been budgeted. So it's a matter of the rollout.
Well,
because-
what I'm saying is
Yep.
roll it out next to the 2 schools that don't have the second set of doors. At least it's one more.
Yeah,
level
the
of
challenge
security.
that we have is that we built, the way that it needs to be rolled out is one side of town, then the other side of town, just because they all have to interface with each other. So
Oh,
we rolled
okay.
it out already at DAG, and
Yeah.
now we're moving on to the next school, because of the way that it
When do we
works.
think it'll be all in?
Again, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver,
Right.
but
I mean, within the year or
within the
2
years
All
is
right.
is the case.
Okay.
It could be January 1st, it could be June 30th.
Okay.
But we actually just did a training about a week ago, phenomenal system, and we still are really trailblazers in that we're the only district I know of in the Northeast that's been doing this, and we obviously are fortunate that we were asked to be partners.
Can you say something publicly about that?
Sure.
I think it's important for people
Yes,
to know, especially
Silox is a security system that allows every teacher and every educator in the building to have access to a panic button through their computer or electronic device. So what happens is that each day that staff has to do an all clear, that all the students are where they're supposed to be, and then during the day, God forbid there's a medical alert. If a student has an allergic reaction to something, they press a certain color button for that on the computer. That immediately goes to the nurse's office. The nurse immediately understands what's going on. He or she could come down to this classroom and deal with this situation. If, God forbid, there's an actual violent circumstance, be it weather, somebody could put the building into a weather mode. Every teacher's computer will be interrupted, and there'll be the message will say, this is what you do with this type of issue or hazard, shall we say. If it's lockdown, same thing, but the police would have the opportunity to work with us as a team to address the situation. So it allows us to be able to understand where a situation is occurring in the building, communicate to not only that educator, but the whole school. So we did a test, and it was amazing because one of the schools that we were using as a test site, their teachers had it open, and they were told that it was a test, but they were monitoring it. So that was a good thing, that they didn't just put a blind eye up to it. And so it gives us that extra response time. It also allows us to work with, as I said, in the event of a significant tragedy like a school shooting or something to that effect. It allows us to be able to appropriately communicate with staff to get them potentially to evacuate, because oftentimes the communication goes down in those circumstances. So we were fortunate enough about a little over a year ago to get a U.S. Department of Safety grant, Department of Defense grant, that helped subsidize the cost of this, but also through our partnership being one of the first districts to roll this out, we received some additional resources. So we're continuing to roll it out. The teachers have gotten professional development at the schools that it's in, and so far it's working well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other remarks about the proposed use of the unencumbered funds? So to review, we're adding $4,000 to the swing set at Pond Hill, making that come up to $87,621. And then $125,000 for the energy facilities study, for a total of $212,621.
No,
No, you're taking out the 400.
No, we're not taking the 4,000 from and adding it?
You're just moving it from one
No,
place to
it's
the other.
the subtotal above will go down
Oh, so
4,000.
That will go
Right.
down,
Yeah.
and this will go up
Yep,
Yes.
to 212.
correct. So the
Oh, I
subtotal
see what you're saying, I'm sorry.
will
I
be
was looking at- yeah.
188.5.
I just don't want any confusion
then-
on what we're taking consensus on.
Correct.
Okay. Right,
And just adding it.
Right.
right. All right. So let's just backtrack, and we'll take consensus on the financial forecast that we already discussed, A1 and A2, with Mr. Barone, starting with Mrs. Corso.
Yes.
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 And yes, and now we'll take consensus on the allocation of additional unencumbered funds in the amount of $212,621. Unless there are any other comments, Mrs. Corso?
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. Next item of business is item 3B, cafeteria reports. Mr. Bondi?
Okay, for the food services current month, for our income this month, or I'm sorry, for September, $213,850. Our expenses in September were $215,198, and we had a loss of $1,348. Our reimbursement detail between federal lunch, breakfast, and state lunch reimbursement came out to $96,351. Our days served in September were 24. Revenue per day was $8,910. Our expenses per day was $8,967. We served 47,479 meals for $1,978 per day. For our year-to-date totals, our total revenue would be the same, $213,850. Our total expenses are $346,523 for a loss of $132,673. And then reimbursement detail and days served and revenue per day would stay the same.
Mrs. Raccio?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time. Well, we have the 3 sheets. I know you got one for the other 2. Are we missing a third one? The percentage, I'm sorry, fourth one? The percentage of free and reduced lunch?
That's the participation worksheet that we had last year. We haven't really been using it since Mr. Mencher left. The one I think you're talking about, it had
Yeah.
how those percentages, we haven't been.
So my question was just at the end of September, were we in good shape for the free and reduced lunch? Because families were only grandfathered up to October 1st,
Up to October 8th,
October 8th?
yes.
Okay, so just worried about families who might have dropped off.
Yes, we did send out warnings, we sent out e-blast, we notified all the schools, and I believe we had maybe 100 students that did not submit applications for this year. Usually at this point, we're engulfed with applications. People, after October 8th, they panic and, oh, my child is now in full paid, and that has not seemed to happen this year. Since October 8th, I think I've received 5 applications, which is unusual in my experiences.
Yeah, that is unusual.
Yeah. So, and we usually get a lot of complaints, or in my experience, but we haven't so far.
As a parent, I got the email that had the revised link, because the link was bad.
Correct,
In the first
yes.
packet that went out, so, that correction has happened and the website's updated.
Yes.
Okay, I guess that's maybe a P-TAC thing that we could just kind of talk about to make sure that everybody knows that it's been updated. I don't know what else we can do.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just a matter of we can ask administrators to send out include it in their updates as we continue to do so, and go from there.
Any other remarks on the other 2 sheets? I do have a question on the 3rd sheet. Back to the liabilities and the unused ROA. Now, what becomes of that?
That's am I on here? Yeah. That's typically the money that was, that's in the bank that students haven't used yet. So if we put money on our student's account and they haven't gone and charged it yet, that's what that money would be. But that number there, the 28,000, that's really an audit number. That's typically adjusted once a year, and we, that number, I don't believe moves during the year. It's really just an entry that when the auditors come in, they look and say, okay, how much money did you collect? How much did they use, and what's left over?
Do we ever find out what becomes of money that's still in a student account when they graduate?
We're looking at a process to either give it back or to transfer it over. We need to get that process down.
Okay, if you could,
Because we can't just move it from one to another, but we're trying to come up with a method of doing it. It's not always, easy to know. They have a sibling in the system, we can move it over.
right. But if everyone has graduated in their family and there's money left in that account, what becomes of it?
Well, right now, it would just be sitting there. We haven't used it.
So you haven't come up with a method
No.
of dispersing that
No,
back to the
I
family?
think that the key is to disperse it at the end of the school year before they go.
Graduate, okay.
Quick question.
Mr. Votto?
On the expense, on the year-to-date, just a quick question. Maybe you folks can remind me, is that unusual, the $132,000 loss for the first month? Like, do you buy extra stuff like the first,
Yes.
kind of refill and replenish from
Yes.
last year?
There were a lot of commodities that came in in the beginning of the year, July and August, which are in inventory now that we're using and paring down.
That's why that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's unusual, especially this year, because we did get some deliveries right at the end of June and at the beginning of July. So our, that number's higher than normal, but our inventory is significantly higher with the commodities that came in. And that's why we asterisk the food cost. Bless you. Yeah, yeah.
You wrote it on the bottom.
Okay.
Right, it's right there.
Any other questions on the cafeteria operations sheets? Seeing none, we'll take consensus, starting with Mrs. Corso.
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. Item 3C, maintenance facilities update. Mr. Deptula.
New handouts. Some of the titles need to be adjusted. We divided it into basically the first page is the status report, the
Thank you.
second page is completed projects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a couple projects we've got going on that aren't on this list, and I see Adelaide is here. This past week, we spent several days collecting data with Wallingford Electric's contractor for the lighting audit. So that information has all been gathered, so now they're putting that together. And I think today, or maybe Friday, our energy audit for everything else went out to bid. So we'll be proceeding with that project also. You know, we really won't know where the costs lie until these audits are complete, and then we should have a better estimate. One of the things that you see on here is the Space Center at Fritz. Pretty exciting project. We've got new floors there and new paint. It's pretty amazing the way it looks right now. It's quite a bit different than it was. We're wrapping that up right now. There's a few little things that need to be done, including painting the chairlift, which is something that I'm volunteering to do on my own time. Painting a chairlift is not a good project. It's really kind of a nightmare.
And casters on the donated items?
We are running into problems with the casters, but we're working on it. We're working on it.
All right. They were donated, so what are you gonna do?
So the first page, at any rate, we're going to change the last column to status. It doesn't need to be complete anymore, and probably on the second one too, and we'll update the titles for next meeting. Any questions?
What's the mini mill?
They're milling machines, automated milling machines.
Those were the ones we purchased for the advanced manufacturing course in collaboration with Goodwin.
Anything but mini.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the detail.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about this update? Seeing none, we're up to the portion of our agenda that includes public comment. So any member of the public has a comment that they'd like to raise, if they would please come up to the podium and give us your name and address. We'd love to hear from you.
Adelaide Kopfer, 35 Whiffletree Road. So my first question, the update on the energy audit you already mentioned. Just to make clear, is that mostly for the automatization, or is there more involved with this audit?
This audit will include everything else. They'll be looking at, every element. What we do with that has yet to be decided. But there's, in the bid, there's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 ASHRAE audit. So if the bids come back, if they're favorable, maybe we'll go all the way. If not, then we could select a lesser audit. The way those audits work, usually 3 would be a result of the number 2. It doesn't always have to be that way, but that's normally how it's done.
Okay. Then the next question, it obviously depends also on the facility update outcome. How is that gonna be integrated in next steps with the facility updates?
I can take that one. First of all, just thank you for bringing up the facility update, because I'm just going to give a quick update to the update, which is that we're waiting to get responses from our state of the Connecticut building department. The board had sent a lot of questions to them, so we're still awaiting responses from them on that. What they recommended when we met with them was that, because we asked them, we said, okay, we're going to do this audit. Is there a way to connect them? Is it going to be a waste of time, waste of energy? And they said, absolutely not. What that information would be used by the architect or engineer, depending on which project we pick, to be part of that planning for that building. So it would actually be helpful, because now they don't have to have that work done by another outside person, so we could actually save money, because we'll have been spending it at this point. So it would be just a transfer of those documents to the group to be able to use with their own engineers and architects as they plan whatever design is chosen.
And do I understand correctly that if we ever get to a decision and the next step will be taken, the design project or process goes out to bid again?
Correct.
And to new companies possibly who are maybe even very experienced with energy efficiency
It would be part of our
measures?
specification. So we would have to look, we'd be going out for an architect engineer, an architectural engineering firm. So they would be developing the specifications with the school district, so we can delineate that we want those specifications to include additional alternative fuel, whatever it may be. That could be built into the application process or the bid process. They would also be looking at educational specifications, so that would be for us to work on with, the administration, with board, with community input, to extend what those would look like. But we're hoping that within the next month, we should hear back from the state with our questions, so that we could have a public meeting, talk about the questions that were asked, talk about the answers that were provided, and then move forward with a recommendation to the town council, because they're the ones who hold.
Okay.
the next-
So then just a very short question. The letter I sent in last meeting, I think, any update on that, or how can I help make this happen?
Mr. Deptula?
I don't think you have to do anything with that. That particular process is not something the town is going to support, but there are other ways of getting this done. But that performance contract where you sign off and kind of hand the whole package to a vendor, that won't happen. This is going to be handled a little differently.
We did present that concept to the mayor and his staff, and it wasn't approved to move forward in that vein. So we did present that back early September, end of August, early September, to the mayor and his team, and we were at that time informed that we need to go through the more traditional process.
And then finally, sorry, last set of words. The idea of inviting Mr. Ball from NEEP, I think, to come and talk to the board about the general theme of energy efficiency, is that?
It's something that we could definitely put on an agenda that in the near future, the challenge with us right now with agenda items is that we're going through the school improvement plans. So we're doubling up on meetings to trying to be efficient. So I think we could definitely put that on our notes and in the minutes to reflect that we could bring him here to talk a little bit about it maybe in December. That's the next time that we have available because of the November meetings being already double booked with curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.